Zach with Wingard Wearables. You are one of 12 special people who's going to watch this video to the end. And today's video is about the Micropike Multitool. Now this is a very unique edged weapon. It is an incredibly short blade on a long curved streamlined handle that terminates in a hammer face. So let me give you a close-up of our new Micropike Gen 2s. Right, he's got the leaf blade, right? And he got this long curved handle. You got this thumb pad, and you have this hand-woven 1/8 inch thick leather grip and a hammer face, right? So I hope that's coming through. All right, so here's all there is to the Micropike. It is about 15 inches long of steel, short blade, leaf blade in this case, long curved handle, which curves to conform to your glorious body, and a hammer face. And there's a primary gripping section, but the entire curved length here is a long streamlined handle. You can grip it up close to the blade for utility cuts, that sort of thing, or even combative grips. You can have two hands on it. And you have the thumb pad. Now, the inspiration for the Micropikes was back in 2016, I was working on the back ripper tomahawk. I was trying to adapt a spike tomahawk to be curved to conform to your waistline, so you could wear it on your right side or your left side, right? So I had that on my mind. And at the same time, I was researching OSS weapons, just going through historic weapons from World War II and that sort of thing. And I saw this picture of the OSS Tyne dagger. So if you are not familiar with the OSS, that was a predecessor to the CIA. And they had sort of an allied organization, the British, the SOE. And so, they had their agents, basically like think James Bond, secret agents, spies, that sort of thing, across the world, spying and taking direct action, covert action against the Axis forces. And they were working on, backup weapons for their spies as last-ditch self-defense or even assassination weapons. I shouldn't have used that word. But anyway, they had the Tyne dagger, which was basically a pitchfork tine that was cut to a single spike, and it had a curve, as a pitchfork tine does as you're using it in utility. It was cut off, and it had a cord wrap, and I think they used a resin to reinforce the grip wrap, and they had like a simple leather sheath. So spikes are very thin. You can wear them compactly in different ways. The length and the curvature of the Tyne dagger does not match the contour of your body, right? But I saw it and it had a slight curve, and I was thinking, it could be longer and more curved and closely follow the contour of your waistline, and you could have a fairly long thrust-based weapon. But the lethality of a spike is very narrow. It makes very narrow puncture wounds. So I thought, why not put a leaf blade, like the battle-proven spear, on the tip of a spike. The spike could act like a long handle, and you could have the lethality of like a long fighting knife, but with a short blade, with a very short, lightweight sheath that you could get the short blade out of very quickly. And that's the inspiration for the Micropike. And it also drew on the V42 stiletto. If you're familiar with that one, it's got like a thumb ridge on it, a thumb pad that you rest on the ricasso region of the dagger for thrusting in a proper orientation that they were training with at the time. So when you have like a curved shape of metal, you really need a way to reinforce intuitive hand-eye coordination for accurate thrust. And it turned out with the curvature of the Micropike, you can get that if you grip it in the primary grip orientation like this, and we added this thumb pad as an ergonomic reinforcement for accurate hand-eye coordination and the thrust. So that's how it started. This was like in 2016 when we came up with the idea. I can link to a video below where we went through various 3D printed plastic iterations to dial in the final length and shape that the Micropike was capable of. But we launched the first generation of Micropikes, I think it was in 2019. So it was like we had several different designs we were pursuing. The Micropike was one of them. It was on the back burner for a while. But finally we launched it in 2019. And this was the first generation Micropike This is a close-up. This came from a customer. This is one piece of hand-forged O1 tool steel. Now, O1 tool steel, it is a more brittle steel. It does not like to move as much when you forge it. If you try to forge it too far, it can be prone to brittle fracture failure. So we did not go really wide on the leaf blades, and in this one in particular, this example was very narrow in the leaf blade. But yeah, these were hand forged, like each leaf blade was unique, had to have its own Kydex carry system thermoform to each Micropike. At the time, the thumb pad was also much narrower because, again, this whole Micropike was one piece of O1, and you can't push O1 too far on forging. But it was flattened out, and these ridges were sort of chiseled in there as sort of ridges for your thumb to rest on. And at the time, we were leather looming the leather grips. My wonderful wife is a knitter. We were trying to figure out how to have a comfortable, unique grip on the primary gripping region of the Micropike. And she knits all kinds of articles of clothing. And so she thought it would be possible to loom leather cord into a tube that we could slide onto these. And that's what we did. Let me give you a close-up of it. I'm trying to remember the diameter of the leather cord. I think it was like 1.5 millimeters maybe. But each one of these took 2 hours to loom, the tubes. We even had to design a loom fixture for her to loom these together. And so they all featured this black leather cord. I think we also did a tan or a bone colored leather. But once you got the tube made, you had to slide it onto the grip. And it was very difficult to go onto the grip. And the leather cord is very thin, fairly thin. And so, the thinner your leather is, the more sensitive it is and more care it needs. So some of our customers were not caring for the leather, as rigorously as it needed. And so it could be prone to slide about on the grip. So that was not desirable. So when we decided to bring back the Micropikes, we sold out of the Gen 1s. They were slow sellers because it was an unusual item. I can get into that in more detail. But when they sold out, we thought, well, one day we are going to make a second generation of Micropikes that are going to be better, right? And it took until 2024 that we tackled it. And this is the second generation Micropike, right? So there are a lot of big differences. First off, the blade is 5160 steel, a far tougher steel. You can really forge out 5160 much easier. It's much more forgiving than O1 tool steel. And so our blacksmith, Zach Stark, over at Stark Metal Works, he made a die, and these are die forged or drop forged to form the leaf blade. He had originally done the hand forging on this. He was using like coal fire at the time, doing it on anvil. Now, thanks to all the work we've been doing with Zach Stark, his shop is significantly improved. He's got gas forges. He's got a power hammer. So he made it up his power hammer with a die that would rapidly form the 5160 into a leaf blade shape that would be more consistent, and it was also significantly wider. You can see the difference here. That's a huge difference. Let me see if I can. Do I need to put my hand back there?
Yeah.
Let me see if I can do this. Un momento, my wife is guiding me. All right. This is a huge difference in blade width, right? Now, the other difference is it comes to a chisel grind. It's flat on this side, and the edges go further back and are much sharper. These are truly sharp. The Micropike Multitools in our first gen, they are beveled on both sides, and the bevel heights are so narrow, it's very difficult to get a decent cutting edge with this. With our new Micropike Gen 2s, these are very sharp with that chisel grind. Also, the 5160 is only a portion of it. The rest of the body is mild steel, and mild steel is even easier to forge and tougher than hardened 5160 steel. 5160, incredibly tough steel for its level of hardness, but just like historic swords from Europe in medieval ages and into the 18th century, the sword blade would be steel, but then it would be forge welded to a wrought iron tang. And wrought iron isn't really a thing anymore commercially. Now mild steel has replaced it. So to maximize toughness, we've got 5160, and it is forge welded, and it's overlapping. It's very difficult. You got to look up really up close to see, but it's inches of overlap in the forge weld of the mild steel onto the 5160 steel. And these are really tough. That forge weld is incredibly strong. And again, forge welding a steel blade onto a more tough tang or handle region of a blade, that's a proven technique that's been going back for centuries. It's definitely a better way to have the hardness of the edge of a steel for piercing and cutting, yet the toughness of the entire steel tool to handle impacts and high force. So that's overall the differences between the Gen 1 and the Gen 2 and as far as the blade and the metal goes. Now on the handles, we've got a, I think it's like a quarter, yeah, we got 1/4 inch hole here and a slot here. I'm sorry, 1/8 inch hole here and a slot here. And so we went with a thicker 3 millimeter or about an 1/8 inch thick leather cord, and instead of looming the leather tube and sliding it onto the grip, this is woven through the handle and through an 1/8 inch hole and then an 1/8 inch slot, which you can barely see at the bottom here. So this is a much thicker cord, much more durable, and its connection to the handle, it doesn't slide about, it's extremely firm. And it's very comfortable, and it looks very nice. So we've done these in, I think we're only offering these in black leather. And the thumb pad, because mild steel is more friendly on forging, it's a lot deeper, right? And we did away with these sort of scuffy chisel marks, and we went with just a deep, we'll call it a depression for the thumb to sit in there. So those are the changes. Is overall a more capable tool. It cuts a lot better. The thrusts are a lot wider. It's a much tougher tool now. And the grip wrap is more durable. I'm trying to think of anything else to say about the changes from Gen 1 and Gen 2. The sheath, oh yeah. So I won't even go into the sheath for Gen 1. We were really new on Kydex at the time. This was like early 2018 when we designed the Kydex for this. It was sort of shaped like a barbed arrow. At the time I hadn't worked out being comfortable with doing eyelets on them, so we had screws to hold the sheath together and a tether, so you'd clip this to your pants, and as you drew it, this would pop out, the blade would pop out, so the connection of the blade to the sheath was fairly loose. Now we've learned more, right? We've built up our skills. This is what the sheath looks like. It's a blade cover sheath with eyelets, got 8 eyelets, 4 on each side. And so we've got a static line on it, okay? So what this is you static line carry sheaths. That's been done in EDC fixed blades for a long time by mini makers. People have done it on like kitchen knives, small fixed blade tactical knives, that sort of thing. All it consists of is a blade cover, some method of tethering a static line, usually to your belt, and then as you draw the blade and the sheath come out of the pants together, and the static line anchors the sheath so that it breaks away and the blade comes out. So on this Micropike right here, I've got the static line here connected to my belt. Slide the blade into the blade cover. Recommend you have a belt that's cinched up to proper pant tightness. There it is. It's worn streamlined against my body. The curvature follows the contour of my body. Our Gen 1 Micropikes, although they could have been, better, they had their problems. The feedback we got from the few that were made that were out there, I think we had 18 sold. We only made 18. And the customers consistently said this was incredibly comfortable to carry. So from the standpoint of ergonomic carry, 15 inches of steel curved to your body, very comfortable. You forget you're wearing it. It's streamlined and moves with your body. But we do recommend that you wear it with pants with a belt, and the belt cinched good, because the belt is the retention on this. And when you draw it, what you're doing is you're drawing both the Micropike and the sheath out. You see the static line there, keeps it against the belt, and it comes out. So I would not recommend this type of setup if you're just sticking it in your gym shorts with like elastic bands that are kind of loose, on the waistline. That's not going to be a secure way to carry it. But, pants with a proper belt, absolutely the way to go. Now, on the Micropike Multitool, we call it the Multitool because it does have utility capabilities, right? That long curved streamlined handle, you can grip it close up to the blade and use it for utility cutting. You can use it as a hammering tool, and I've even had customers tell me they've used theirs to like reach for hard to reach things, like, and pull it towards them, kind of like a hook that you're not piercing with. You're just like using it, think like a shepherd's crook, pulling things towards you in utility. Right? What I do not recommend, no matter how tough, the mild steel 5160 steel construction is, I do not recommend prying with it. It is a blade. It is meant for cutting and piercing. Do not use this, all this leverage and stuff, to pry with your Micropike Multitool. Now, in combatives, you have single hand grip, thumb on the pad, your fingers are wrapped around securely on the leather grip wrap section. You have a lot of retention here because of that curvature, right? You can push and extract very quickly with that streamlined leaf blade. And the hand-eye coordination with your thumb pad here is excellent. You can get very accurate thrusts, and the thrusts are fairly long. Like, this is over 9 inches from my thumb tip to the blade tip, over 9 inches of reach with a 2.5-inch blade. So that's single hand grip. You could in theory do slashing motions and that sort of thing. But in single hand grip, you have a lot of reach. You have a lot of penetration depth. Some people say, with a fighting knife or something, you only need the length of your thumb to reach a vital area, or you only need like a 5-inch blade or a 7-inch blade. Those are true statements if you have an ideal target line to reach a vital component in the body. Some of you may be familiar with, the prison knife fighting text, put them down, take them out. That was, leading with the empty hand, throwing, a jab to the eyes or throwing an object at the eyes, and then grabbing and controlling the opponent's side, turning them and thrusting basically under the opponent's armpit and trying to reach the vitals that way. That's a method of knife fighting that has been out there since for who knows how long. It was at least documented in the 80s in like text and books, right? But it's very potent, right? You're protecting the blade up against your body. You have the free hand, the live hand moving to manipulate around the opponent to go thrust, to the side control. And in that aspect, you actually need a lot of penetration depth because the distance between the armpit to the vitals is actually quite long. But it's not all about one-handed grip. And we had a martial arts combatives consultant, Tim Gillette, out in Tiverton, Rhode Island, that we lent a Micropike Multitool to. He has extensive experience with blades. He had worked on the tactical team at a max security prison in Rhode Island for, I think he said 9 years. And he gets stabbed 3 times. Like he's seen a lot of, I'll try not to use profanity. He's seen a lot of horrible things, right? With edged weapons. He's had them used against them, and he's trained extensively. He runs MMA training facility over at Tiverton, but he also does a lot of FMA. And so he got the Micropike in hand, and he had a gathering of senseis from other schools, and afterwards he was like, hey, I got this thing to show you. What do you guys think of this? Because it was such an unusual shaped thing. And these guys are the best of the best, right? They're in the top 1% of 1% of people that train with blades, FMA background, that sort of thing. And they actually do a lot of knife fighting drills and knife defense drills. And what they found was the one-handed grip, when you're so good that you can grab like a 4-inch knife trainer out of someone's hands, the one-handed grip has a lot of reach that a very skilled opponent can grab and attempt to deflect, right? But what they did find was that length, because this is basically a streamlined handle section, when you get your second hand on it, it then becomes impossible to deflect. A lot of the common knife defenses, trying to grab the blade to control it or deflect the knife hand, they go out the window when you have two hands on the blade, right? Now you're engaging with both your chest, your shoulders, your core, your hips. You are driving that blade into target. And the two-handed grip, the conclusion they had was this is incredibly deadly. It was not something that you really had any knife fighting defense against. You just basically had to get away from the point. It's kind of like a spear, which is one of the reasons we call it the Micropike. You're engaging just so much power in your core, driving it forward, and you can change where you grip along the body of the tool. If you grip it like this, you've got over 6 inches of penetration depth driving to target. If you grip it closer behind the leaf blade, you actually have less lethal chunking and gouging and raking you can do, powering through an opponent's defense for less lethal effects. So unlike a big fighting knife blade, which is pretty much only good for deadly slashes and stabs, the Micropike actually provides scalable lethality. Like, you have the ability to choke up, power through, and do far less damage, intentionally, like raking and gouging, and depositing a amount of force that could deter an opponent and not lead to further bloodshed. So it's an interesting tool with some really unique capabilities in combatives. I've said it before, trust and thrust, across different contexts, people are wearing different clothing in different weather conditions and in different environments. The slash, a knife cut is definitely effective in a lot of cultures. It's battle proven, but when it comes to like thick layered clothing, like winter clothing and that sort of thing, the thrust gets through layered fabrics and textiles much easier than the cut, especially when you're talking smaller EDC-able knife type tools. So this is really an incredibly potent thrust-based tool. Now, we will have a small batch of Micropike Gen 2s available later this week. By small, I think we're going to have like 7 available. Those will probably sell out pretty quickly, so you want to be on our mailing list for that. But the question we sometimes get is like, are you going to make more of these? Are you going to make changes to them? That sort of thing. Like, what's the future of the Micropike Multitool? We don't know, right? This is an unknown future. And the big reason is it violates one of the most important marketing rules, similar but different. If you want a successful product, you want to look like something a customer is familiar with, but be different and provide some distinct value. So the Micropike, off the charts effective, deadly, definitely provides value, but it just looks unlike anything out there. And so we know this from tabletop shows or from social media posts. When people see this, they don't understand what it does, what it provides. It's just too different. It is not similar to anything else out there. And so the more you have to explain something to somebody, the less likely they're going to pull the trigger on that purchase. So that's difficult from a marketing perspective. Also, the shape of it is very difficult simply to photograph. It's difficult to convey the three-dimensionality of this tool in a static photo. So that's difficult as well. But if I were to guess on the future of it, we're probably going to keep making it, but rarely and in small batches. Like this small batch, we made like 9 in the second batch, so there are only 9 Micropike Gen 2s in existence, right? When those sell out, will we make another batch or will we make some tweaks? I don't know. but these are probably never going to be something that we make a lot of. The design, you know, having this curvature that follows the contour of your body, having a short blade, you know, maybe we go with like a pry bar version, eliminate the leather grip, you know, it's just one piece of rigid metal. You know, maybe we have it so it can interface with, you know, hacksaw blades or wire saws, you know, for other utility purposes. I don't know, but you know, we're only going to be able to devote so much energy into designing something that's already really, really niche because it's so unusual. But it's a very interesting tool. It provides a lot of unique capability. You know, really just comment below if this is something that interests you, if you're interested in getting in on the batch of Micropike Gen 2s. And if you missed the batch, do you want to get in on a third batch? You know, let us know below. You are one of 12 special people who watched this video to the end. Share it with a friend so 13 people will have watched it. And remember to be edgy.